The weather was kind of bad driving.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Commission for February 8th. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Bessler,
Present.
Commissioner Fox,
Present.
Alderman Adams. Here. Mayor Abendroth,
Here.
Commissioner Mason,
Here.
Commissioner Stoker,
Here.
Commissioner Parrish,
Here.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer.
Here.
We have a quorum, and the first item on our agenda is the approval of the January 11th minutes.
I move to approve the minutes as written.
So moved.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Schaefer.
The only thing I was going to ask about, sorry, let me get there. Under number 4 for Veridian, isn't the discussion that's under there, and I know I was late to that meeting, but the discussion that's under there is about Fresh, which is number 2, I think, right? That's where Commissioner Parrish asked about Fresh having a bathroom. Isn't that not
Yeah, it
under
reads a
Veridian?
little odd, but that's because it was a consent. They were all on consent,
Okay.
and they talked about those at the end.
So it hasn't, it's just happens to fall
Yeah.
under there. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Any other comments? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Move on to our consent agenda. The first item is We Energies, 7980 West Dodges Bay Road. The applicant is seeking a road reservation vacation to remove a 30-foot road reservation for the property located at 7980 West Dodges Bay Road. The second item is Fiddlehead's Coffee, 10530 North Port Washington Road. Master sign plan amendment. The applicant is seeking master sign plan amendment approval to allow for signage on 2 awnings, 8 square feet in area at the property at 10530 North Port Washington Road. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion about either of these 2 items? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. We move on to a public hearing. The public hearing is for P2 Development Company, 6809 West Mequon Road, 6835 West Mequon Road, and 6729 West Mequon Road. The applicant is seeking conditional use grant approval, building and site plan approval, certified survey map, and specimen tree removal for 2 trees for a 3-story, 88-unit, multiple-family residential development located in the town center at 6729 to 6835 West Mequon Road. We need a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second to go into public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to address the commission on this item? Seeing none.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed.
Did you want to invite the applicants up?
Yes.
to the table? As many of you recall, we looked at this back in November, or it was in front of us for a concept plan and a PUD rezoning that went on to Common Council in December and was approved. So now they're back in front of us for a conditional use grant, building site plan, specimen tree removal, and certified survey map. The project, I have the overall site plan just to give you some context, is essentially saying what we've seen at the PUD. This is the site we're going with first today. It's 81 unit apartments. They've dropped the number of units on the site to better fit in with the south property line. They shifted the building a little bit and as a result lost a couple units in there. So we're down to 81 total units. The average size is shown at 1,232 square feet. The mix includes 21 one-bedroom, 42 two-bedroom, and 18 two-bedroom with den apartments. As you may recall, there was a couple of waivers that were granted as part of the PUD. One was that 20% of the units are allowed to be less than 1,000 square feet, with no unit less than 881 square feet, and the FAR for the entire project was allowed to be at 66%. All the other requirements of the zoning code are met with the project. Again, the site plan is similar. There were some minor changes that were made as a result of some of the comments made at the council meeting. The building was shifted a little bit to the north in order to provide additional buffer to the apartments to the south. And as you'll see later, there's some additional trees that the applicant is placing on the neighboring property as a buffer. We did tweak a little bit. As you may recall, this intersection we had some concerns with last time. Now we've kind of straightened that out, put an island in there. We have worked with the applicant. We've updated the plan. That's not reflected here. This island had to be brought back up a little bit to allow cars to kind of come out this direction. So that's been already adjusted. We already have plans for it. It just didn't get in the packet. Other than that, the site plan is essentially the same as it was when we viewed it at the PUD. As part of the project, as you're all aware, there'll be a shared driveway with the RCAC, the memory care, and the future retail development on Mequon Road. As part of this approval, we're going to require that this road section get installed prior to occupancy of either one of these two developments, whichever comes first. That'll include the street trees, the islands, the landscaping, and the sidewalks along Mequon Road to get to Mequon Road. In terms of the building plans, the applicants provided a number of renderings, kind of go through everything to show you kind of how we evolved since our last meeting. They provided some updated 3D renderings to get better context of the entire site. This just shows the view from interior to the site. They've added a number of windows to the pool area compared to the last version. We've also worked with them on some of the articulation of the building. The columns of the in the balconies have been modified and have been raised a little bit, so there's not such a flat profile of that roof area. Just kind of go through some of these. It's probably tougher to see on the screen than it is on your machines, but this gives a little bit more of a detail to the front of the building. This kind of shows what that plaza area is going to look like between the building. As you may recall, this area in here is underground parking, so there's no green area, so they've decorated with trees and other amenities to make that more of a livable space for the tenants on the first floor. Just another rendering of the area. Again, it shows some of the articulation of those stone features and how it exceeds the height of the roof. Just kind of go through a couple more for you. Similar detail. The only issues that we had remaining, and the staff report kind of talks about a little bit, is there's some brick that we wanted to be wrapped around the corner on this, particularly on the southwest corner of the building. The applicant has agreed to do that. It would be in this area here, and then on the following page, it's in this back corner here. We've also looked at two different alternative designs in terms of the columns on these two elevations. We prefer the design that's shown in front of you here tonight, which shows that those columns do not extend all the way up to the roof line like the other front and east elevation does. The only thing we were looking for is maybe another bit of a trim detail over those windows to provide a more horizontal band across that entire elevation. Jim's not here tonight, but I did meet with him today, our architect on the commission, and he was supportive of that change and felt that the changes were made were much improved since the last version. So with the building plan, those are the only recommended changes that we had, and we're happy with the progress that's been made so far. Again, I mentioned there's two specimen trees on site. Ken Baker was out to the site there, located smack dab in the footprint of the building, and he said the trees were not in the best of condition, so he's okay with removal in accordance with the tree preservation ordinance. This property is over 2.5 stories, which by definition in the code requires a shadow line study, which is in the packet. Let me get to that. Basically what we have here is the shadow line study, which shows basically a 3-story and then the 2.5 story. It's a little smaller on the screen, but let me zoom in a little bit. The only difference between the elevations of the two buildings was the December view to the property to the west. There's a little bit more shadow cast. It's a pretty narrow property. Our opinion is that no matter what develops on that piece, more than likely it's going to be in the shadow line of the 2.5 story or the 3 story, so we don't see much of an impact of that additional story in terms of impacting that neighboring property. In terms of the landscaping plan, there's a number of changes that were suggested by our landscape architect. And one of the things, and we also have updates to this already, we asked the applicant to provide some changes to the interior courtyard. This will also come up with the next project that's in front of you. This area here, we prefer to see more of a 40-foot on center, kind of trees in a row along that interior road, and the applicant has already addressed that and has given us updated plans to reflect that, so we're happy with that. There are also a couple minor changes to the species that were recommended by the architect. Down in here, as you can see, this is what I was referring to earlier. The applicant is looking at planting a number of trees on the neighboring property to help screen some of the existing apartments. He's worked with the owners of the apartments, and they're on board with the idea. We did ask for a couple transplant species in this area to break up he's showing 19, I think, Black Hill spruce, so we asked for a mixture of some Norway spruce in there, which grow a little bit taller to kind of help screen that building. So we're happy with that. In terms of lighting, there are some minor tweaks that are needed to the lighting plan. Let me get to that page. The lighting plan is basically showing the same fixtures as the memory care facility. They are using our town center fixture, which we have on Cedarburg Road up in this area here. And it's shown on this area as well. So we're asking him to update this fixture right here to match the town center, and then the neighboring development will ask them to address these as well. So the interior fixtures will match your same interior parking lot lights as the memory care. The main thoroughfares will have the town center decorative lights. There's a couple other minor tweaks to the dispersion plan that'll be needed to address that staff can handle as a condition of approval. Again, there's a certified survey map. This will create 3 separate parcels. One will include the RCAC, one will include the apartment building, and then the third piece will be the future retail development that Lakeside will retain ownership of. This memory care was already a separate parcel on its own. So with that, staff is supportive of the project and recommends approval according to the conditions in the report. Thanks.
All right, go to the applicant, and you'd like to make any statement or comments to the commission?
Basically, the most important part was our neighbor to the south that's owned by a group out of Minnesota. There's a pretty large apartment complex there, and they were kind enough to allow us to do landscaping actually on their lot to really buffer between the buildings, because I know that was a concern of people that were here as far as buffering that between those two. And by us moving the building to the north a little bit and getting the neighbors' permission to add those additional trees back there, I think that's going to soften that quite a bit. And also, we did reduce it from the 88 units that were approved down to 81 units. And looking forward to having probably the nicest apartment building in Ozaukee County here.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners?
I have a question on the landscaping. On the Mequon Road side, to what extent are we going to put some landscaping in there that cuts the mass of the building? Because it is a big building, comparatively speaking to the rest of the buildings in the area. And to the extent you've got some tall landscaping in there to kind of mask that would be useful. What's the plan now to do that?
There are the east-west road, which would be along the north property line of the parcel of ours. There will be, your tall street trees along there, and then also behind our parking lot to the south of the parking lot there, that's also masked with a lot of tall trees in the green area there. So we're doing our best that we can to plant trees that are going to mature.
A lot of vertical
Yes.
dimension to them?
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Adams?
I just been giving this project a lot of thought since I saw it months ago, and I just cannot support it right now due to the size of the building, the scale and massing of it. It's a lot of building in one spot. It's 37,000 square feet per floor, which adds up to 118,000 square feet. Now, I'm not against apartments here. I just would rather see more individual buildings, smaller, connected, just a little more finesse to it. I don't see buildings this size in the spirit of our community right now. And this isn't the only one I see. I foresee in the future, in this area with the zoning that we have, and I've heard some things, there's going to be a lot more apartments, and I think we all know that in the city center. And if we have a large one here, that will translate to other ones. And you can all, make up your own mind on the type of apartments you like, but I cannot relate to something of this size in this community. You may ask, well, what about the 3.5-story ones in our arrival corridor, the Wired project? Those are different. Those have, I think, maybe 17 units or 20 units per building. That, I think, is more livable for this community. So if I didn't foresee this in the future, keeping going down the corridor, I don't think I'd be quite as strong at this point. So that's where I stand right now. And I think if you just looked at that eastern view, that was a good view of how this is a big building. So, thank you.
Commissioner Mason.
I was wondering if you wanted to just explain the stone that you have laying out in front here?
Yes, the columns that go around the entire building are somewhat of a Lannon stone type column, and then we're using a little larger brick, the king size brick, which is kind of over on this end. We show a queen size and a king size. The king size a little bigger. We'll be using that. We exceed the ratios of masonry on the building that's required by the city of Mequon. And Pam, to answer a couple of your concerns, one thing that allows us to offer all these amenities with an indoor pool and, the sauna and the workout center and all of these things, you have to have a certain scale of a building to be able to dilute the cost of all those amenities. And in wanting to have a building with a lot of amenities to create kind of a community spirit, to do that, you just have to have an X amount of units to make it economically worthwhile. And like I said, we did drop it down from 88 to 81 units. And we really know there is a big need for an apartment complex with a lot of high-end amenities, which everything we've had done as far as the 2 studies we've had taken place, one 3 weeks ago and one 6 months ago, it shows and it warrants doing that. So that's what's kind of driven it also. But I do understand your concern of the size of the building.
Commissioner Stoker.
I wasn't finished.
The staff's recommendation of approval does come with 22 conditions. I read through them all. None of them seem overwhelming to me. Do you have any, is there any contention with any of those conditions? Or are you comfortable with all 22 of the staff conditions?
We're comfortable with all of them. We've met numerous times with Jack and Kim, and also had a meeting with the architect who isn't here this evening, and we did a presentation with him. He had some recommendations. We made all the changes that he recommended just to try to get everybody on board as far as that goes, and just come up with a really good quality project.
That was my question.
That was your question.
That was it.
Okay. Mr. Parrish.
I just wanted to thank the applicant. I think it's a great revised concept. Last time you were here for a concept plan, so I can tell you incorporated a lot of our feedback, and we certainly appreciate that. I guess I don't share the exact same massing concerns, primarily because it is so far set back from the road. So while I would object to a building like this, of this mass right on Mequon Road, ultimately you have to recall there's going to be a retail center as depicted kind of in the front. So that will provide quite a bit of screening when that eventually does get done. There probably is quite a bit of a need, as you've demonstrated. Perhaps it could be slightly smaller as a condition of approval. I'm open-minded to that. I guess what strikes me is really where the pool is in the front of the building, and I was hoping Jack could pull up, just show us where the entrance is to this building, because it feels like it's right where the pool is, and I just wanted a better understanding of it and maybe just understand the rationale behind it and why it had to be there versus tucked into the building and more part of the building versus outside of the building. So,
This viewpoint kind of gives you a little bit of a view into the entranceway. Here's the doorway. There's a doorway on each side between the building and the pool itself, and those will be the entrances into that common area, and they'll have access from the building into the pool area. And we did look at it. I mean, it's a tough site because there's really not another location they could have put such an amenity unless it was somewhat underground or incorporated in both the parking underground. There was really no other location to provide that amenity. And with having that second floor, you can see some of the treatments on there. There's the second floor kind of active area. That is a nice feature to have in the site as well, and that'll I think add to the vitality of the whole development. So yeah, it is a little bit unique of a design, and so we tried to work with that as best we could with some of the changes we made. We did actually make this this corridor, I think, a little wider to provide a little bit more active space in there. But it does also give a little bit of privacy to some of those units that are in this area here. It almost gives them like a nice courtyard feel. So I think, again, overall, we've spent a lot of time with the applicant for the last 6 months, and I think we've come to a point where we're
I wouldn't want to
satisfied.
hold up the process, but I definitely could care for a different way of presenting this, perhaps where the pool was tucked more into the building and the entrance was much more prominent, if there was a way to design that into there. Otherwise, I think it's a very creative, wonderful design, and I'd be in favor of it with some changes. Oh, one other question. What percentage, so you brought up 100,000 square feet.
118,000
Yep.
square feet.
So a lot of that is pool and amenities, what percentage is amenities versus,
Amenities on here probably represent probably 12%, 13% thereabouts,
Okay.
and then
Yeah, you think you have to look at the math of 81 units at 1,200 square foot a unit. So, I mean, it adds up quickly, and part of that is because we require such a large apartment size to keep the values up as well. So it kind of creates its own problem when you have such large units. You're going to get a larger building, so.
thank you.
part of the design is the second floor, which is the flat area above the pool and the workout area and the community room. That's also a community gathering area with cookout grills, a fire pit. It's over 4,500 square feet. It's a pretty good size roof over that area. So we have a similar situation in a couple other complexes we've built. And it's just a great gathering area for all of the residents. And also there's a large community room in the first floor of that next to the pool. And there too, there's, countless Packer parties, birthday parties, and, it's just a great place. There's a big fireplace in there, and it works well as a community versus just an apartment building that you show up and you go elsewhere for all of your communication with other people and neighbors, and it starts to bring people together. And I think that's part of what you're trying to do with the whole area, turn it into an area where people are walking and they don't have to go hop in their car for everything they want to do as far as going to work out and things like that. And it's close proximity up to 76th and Mequon Road for a little bit of shopping up there. And as things get developed along Mequon Road to the east, I just can see a lot of foot traffic, which I think is part of the overall plan that's everybody's hoping will keep coming along as time progresses.
And just a little, I guess, point of clarification, the Blair, the Williams project here has 28 units in it currently, but it was approved for 50 total units. They decided to reduce the number to go with a lot larger. I mean, some of those units go up to 2,800 square feet. And they also have first floor retail on both of those buildings as well, so.
Mr. Schaefer.
I would echo Commissioner Parrish's comments. There's been a lot of collaboration, obviously, that's gone on over however many months. Because I remember when you were here has it really been 6 months? However long it's been.
A while,
well done.
yes.
But I think I voted against this the last time, and I share Commissioner Adams' concerns about the size. I remember voicing that last time as well. And then also, can you remind me, I believe I asked last time kind of about an average projected rent that you were hoping to get for these units. I know it will vary by number of bedrooms and the size of the unit, but is that something you could share?
Surely. They're going to be starting out just a little over $1,400 a unit and probably going up to around $2,300 a unit, depending on the size and the floors and things like that. One other point that if you may or may not be aware of, but the current design for the proposal due north of us, which is a two-story commercial office building, and that's, pretty close to the street as far as that goes. So as you go down Mequon Road, I mean, a two-story building, because they're asking them with the storefronts and things like that to be located pretty close to the road, as our memory care building is, pretty well overshadows a big building hundreds of feet behind it.
Agree.
It's not something you're going to drive by as you're going past on Mequon Road. You're only going to get a glimpse of it looking up the access road we'll put in to get to it. But it's not like there's just going to be this great big monster sitting right up at the street. And it is a peculiar site, having the high-tension
Yep.
towers on the one side. And, there's many things that can go there. This seems to fit quite well as far as what might be acceptable and usable.
Yep,
and
and I don't
economical.
disagree. It was a good creative solution. I think my concern was maybe more so than the size, like here's this behemoth of a building, but actually the number of units. And I know that I'm having a lot of deja vu. I think I brought this up last time, that I was surprised that you've done the market research and it said there was a high demand for these
Very high demand.
high-end apartments, because it seems high in number to me. Did you also quote a different number in rent for the last time? Because I had the number 3,000 stuck in my head, which felt exorbitant.
No, we've never had projections
Okay,
that
perhaps
high.
I'm just-
It'd sure be great if that would
You would
come
like
to
that.
reality, yes. But
You probably wouldn't rent that many, but you would like it if you could.
Some of the ones in the town center are in the top
Yeah,
floors, I
but
think,
for
are in
some
that
reason I was-
3,000
okay.
range.
but
Fair
much
enough.
larger in square footage.
Yep,
Like
different.
Jack said, I think they go up to 2,800 square feet.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bessler?
Jack, under the waivers that were approved, can you explain the significance of the maximum allowable FAR is 66%? Remind me what FAR stands for.
The FAR is the floor area ratio, and in the rival corridor, it's 50%. So they asked for the waiver to go up to 66%. And we had this, if you recall, the Dermond property also received a waiver for their apartments. They were in the town center, which allowed 100% FAR, and they got up to 116%. And some of the reasons for the FAR increase, even though it meant all the other requirements, the FAR was necessary because of the size of the units, the large amount of amenities they're providing with the indoor pool. And then it's not just isolated to this site, it's also the RCAC with all their community rooms and cafeterias that are a part of that we felt it was acceptable to exceed that FAR requirement. And that was built into the PUD that was approved by council.
I see. Thank you.
Commissioner Adams?
Well, I was clear that I'm very open for apartments here. And I was clear last time that I liked the amenities that you're offering, and it seemed high quality. I'm not at all putting you down for that. But I do think there's ways to bring those amenities and have smaller buildings in an area around a main amenity. I've lived like that in Kansas City a couple of years and out of college. And, they had the indoor-outdoor pool, the steam room, the volleyball courts, all easily accessible, just walking, just a little bit to get there. Because this is not a hotel, they're apartments. People don't mind doing that, I don't feel. So I would think that you could get amenities in apartments that are bigger but massed differently in smaller buildings. I just want to clarify, I brought up square footage. You had told me when I asked you 37,000 square feet per floor. Does that include the swimming pool?
I don't think it does. Kim asked me to get an email today, and I just looked at the plan. I assume just by doing the math, it's a little short. So I think there's about 4,000 or 5,000 square foot of that area as well.
Yeah, upstairs and downstairs, so,
Well, we wouldn't, there's only one story interior of the pool. We wouldn't count the roof deck as,
the roof deck, okay.
yeah, that wouldn't be
I
counted.
just want to be clear, because we were saying it's 12% of the square footage, but that's not part of the number that I thought I said. And then, I also want to clarify another fact that came up, and that's about when I compared it to the rival corridor buildings. It's a total of those many apartments in 2 buildings, correct? Because one building has like 17 and the other one maybe 20 or something?
Are you talking about next door?
Yeah, because you were throwing out those numbers, and you said, oh, they have how many apartments? What did you say?
There's a
The Blair
total of
project?
28. Well, technically it's considered one building because it connects underground, but there is 28 total, and above ground, there's 14 in the north and 14 in the,
I just want to be clear, because visually, to me, that's what I'm talking about, massing differently in smaller buildings. You might consider that one building. I don't. I see 2 buildings because everyone has, every single
Sure.
exposure on it. Okay, so then, and what I'm going to do, because I think after I thought about this, I even surprised myself not wanting something this big, but I'm looking at the future. The council is going to have a meeting of the whole, hopefully this spring, hopefully March, about the city center, just to kind of reassess where we're at, how, I hope to also bring up, is the zoning working, et cetera. So just so you know, I can bring that forward at council if I have those concerns at that time also. And last of all, it's nice to be working on trees, but I get the idea we're using trees to cover this building, not to enhance it. I like trees to enhance the landscaping, and I don't like buildings to have to hide other buildings, and that's another reason I'm having a problem with the size. There are ways maybe to minimize the impact visually for passerbyers, but to me, you shouldn't have to minimize it. If it's what Mequon wants, we should be able to have it anywhere.
Commissioner
I'm going
Mason?
to make a motion.
Go ahead, sir.
I move to approve the P2 development as described by staff with all listed requirements.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve, subject to staff comments.
I just had
Commissioner
one,
Fox.
I had one question. Is there any intent for commercial integration between the 3 buildings? Because what you've got there are different levels of care, plus just a plain apartment building, as I understand it, so that people could migrate from one of those facilities to the other as their needs changed. Is that in the plan at all, or are these considered to be completely separate activities?
The buildings are separate, but we've already had conversations with the people that are doing the 60-unit RCAC right next to us, because it's a natural progression, and we happen to be involved with communities like that. We own some, where you have some people, as they grow on in age a little bit, that within a same campus, they've got a place to move, and the next thing would be to go to an RCAC and then to like a CBRF memory care type unit. And we are also appealing to, empty nesters, retired people, people that spend time out west or down south, Florida, Arizona, wherever they might spend their winter, retired, come back here, which seems to be very popular. And our study showed that we're going to expect a pretty good percentage of our population there, upwards of 35%, that would be retired people and things like that. So we can see that progression. We actually own other facilities that are set up that way. There is a progression. We are also owners of the memory care building that is there.
So there would be sort of a perpetual campus
Yes.
environment
Yep.
that people could change their location, but be in essentially the same facility over an
location,
extended
yes.
period of
Yep.
time.
And that is part of our plan, that you would have some people that would kind of grow old with the building per se.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow that question up, is that okay?
Sure.
Just because it kind of will lead into our next thing we're gonna talk about with you, which is
Sure.
that building. Normally, when that happens, apartments, then you move to assisted living where you take care of yourself and you just go down for meals. But I thought that this other building we're gonna be visiting next is really for people that need 24-hour care. Is it gonna have, well, I guess I could bring that up at the next phase.
It's not our project. I'm very familiar with it because it's kind of happening simultaneously, and my understanding is the licensing would be at an RCAC level, which that designation is where you have more ambulatory people that can drive, because they're accommodating for underground parking there and things like that.
Okay, so it will then do what you're asking?
Yes.
I just want to make sure, because
Gradually it becomes more intense as you move from facility to
I
facility.
wasn't sure if we were missing a link, and that's
Yep.
the independent kind of living within a
Correct.
care facility?
Yes.
Okay.
Ready to vote? Okay, call the roll, Robin.
Commissioner Stoker,
Aye.
Commissioner Bessler,
Aye.
Commissioner Fox,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Adams,
No.
Mayor Abendroth.
Aye.
Vote passes 7-1.
Vote passes 7-1. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You don't have to. It's okay if you do.
Move on to item number 5, Robert Niebauer for Lakeside Development, 6809 West Mequon Road. The applicant is seeking conditional use grant and building site plan approval for a 3-story, 60-unit assisted living care facility at 6729 to 6835 West Mequon Road.
So this is Phase 2 of our approvals for this site. This is, again, in front of Common Council in December. Other than the FAR requirement of 66%, it meets all the requirements of the AC zone. I have the site plan in front of you up on the screen. The only changes to the last version, they did actually shift the building even further from the existing tree line along the south property line. One of the things they did do is shifted so far, though, that we lost a terrace area between the sidewalk and the road, so we're asking that the building just get shifted back a few feet, so 3 feet or so we can get a tree line in there to emulate the tree pattern that will occur on the west portion of the site. So other than that, the site plan is essentially the same. They did add a little bit of a stormwater pond here. The main stormwater pond will be in this area below the high tension lines, but there may be some issues with capacity there, so they've added a smaller little pond here. And there's also a potential that they may be doing some underground storage on the retail portion as well. So they're still kind of flushing those things out, but they do have ample area for to handle all the stormwater requirements. As we discussed earlier, this is an RCAC, which is a resident care apartment complex. I think Bob can give us all the details on what that licensing all entails. There's 53 surface parking and 34 below-grade parking for the residents. There's also a shared parking agreement between all these different entities in case there is overflow on one side or the other. I would assume this one will probably see the least amount of parking demand, and maybe some of the apartment users or guests will come over here to park to visit the apartment residents. In terms of the building, again, we've been working with them for quite some time on some changes. The new building design, I think, is a vast improvement than what was seen at the concept plan. We've tweaked the materials and the location of the materials, and we've softened it up a little bit to kind of match the same color palette of the memory care facility. There's also a couple renderings that kind of show what the unit will look like from the front. So we're happy with a lot of the changes that were made with this building since you last seen it. This is also an excess of 2.5 stories in height, which requires the conditional use grant. This shadow line study shows all the shadowing would take place to the interior, so there's no impact on any of the surrounding properties. Again, some minor changes to the landscaping plan with the trees and the 40-foot on center along that interior road. Same issue we talked about with regard to the lighting. With that interior road, we want those town center lights to go the length of the road. A couple other light trespass issues, nothing major. There's no specimen trees on this site, but as I mentioned, there is a pretty significant tree line along the south property line. I did have Ken Baker go out and look at it, and he does recommend some tree protection fencing at the drip line to protect those trees during construction. He feels the proposed building will be far enough so it won't have any impact on the long-term health of the trees. But other than that, again, we feel like we've worked on this for quite a while, and we're happy with the final project with the building and the site itself, so we do recommend approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. And just so we don't get too far, we do need to have a public
Yes,
hearing
yes.
on this, so hold on 1 second. I need a
Motion to open public hearing?
Second.
Motion and second to go into public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is now open. Does anybody wish to address the commission on this item? Seeing none.
Motion to close this public hearing.
Good job.
Second.
Motion and second to close public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Public hearing is now closed. All right, we'll go to Mr. Niebar. Do you have anything you want to add?
Well, we're primarily here to answer any questions you folks might have, so.
Okay, we'll see if we
That's-
have any. Commissioners, any comments, questions? We have a motion.
Hang on.
Pardon?
You have a question down there.
You have a question?
I just have a comment.
Oh,
To me, this is a different situation. This is a totally different type of facility than the apartments, and it's a much smaller building. It's maybe, well, it's 21,000 square feet, 21.5 versus 37.5. So, and I do think it's a lot consistent with the facilities we have already in our community, and I still feel there's a need for it. And I really do like the new design. So, I would welcome you with this design.
What's the total elevation of this building compared to the one we just discussed?
When you say elevation,
I mean, the height of the building. In other words, you've got 3 stories in the apartment building. This is 3 stories plus a hip roof.
they're
So
roughly about the same.
They're essentially the same,
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
correct.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the conditional use grant with the staff recommendations.
Second.
And a building site plan?
Yes.
Building
Thank you.
Motion and a second to approve. Is there any further discussion? If not, call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Fox,
Aye.
oh, sorry, Commissioner Bessler,
Aye.
Commissioner Stoker,
Aye.
Alderman Adams,
Aye.
Mayor Abendroth.
Aye.
Vote passes 8-0.
Thought she was going around the room.
Passes 8-0.
Thank you.
Good luck to you. Look forward to it. Move on to regular business. The first item is Mequon Town Center LLC, Development Agreement Amendment. The applicant is seeking development agreement amendment for the property located at the northwest corner of Cedarburg Road and Mequon Road in the Town Center to extend the timeline for Phase 2 project completion regarding Cafe Hollander.
Yes, this is more just an update for the commission and anyone watching at home. The development agreement was required that by February 29th, the Hollander building, the restaurant on the corner, would have to been done with all site amenities completed by June 30th. Obviously, the restaurant will not be completed by February 29th, so the developers asked that June 30th be the deadline for both the restaurant completion as well as the all site amenities. So at that point, on June 30th, hopefully all work on that site will be completed to our satisfaction. So this is more of an update. We recommend approval, and this will go on to common council. So if there's any questions.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Is it projected that it would be done before June 30th? Is that just a safety? Date?
Blair Williams with President of Wired Properties. They should be open for over a month at that point. There's an existing June 30th date in the development agreement for the completion of everything else. This just ties the 2 dates to each other, so it comes to a completion at the same time.
Okay. I'm glad to see you here. It'd be great if you could come every time we talk about this property, because we've been talking about it a lot.
I've heard
I bet you
several
have.
comments here tonight.
I think everybody's looking forward to the opening of that restaurant, so,
I know I am.
yeah,
Yeah.
certainly everybody at City Hall.
Yeah, you've got me here. Maybe one of my very last visits to y'all. I'm pleased to answer any questions about it you have.
Anybody have a-
Would you care to comment on what's causing the delays at this point?
The restaurant is really the one piece that's been hanging out, and it had to do with things that were going on internal to Cafe Hollander, and to Lowlands Group. We went through a couple of design changes over the course of about a year as we were working through the design. They were always steadfastly committed to Mequon, but they just were working through some internal structural things that kind of slowed them down at a couple of points in that process. But they are full bore right now. That building is moving very, very quickly, and I would say the one thing that slowed things down was they didn't have the building far enough to be in a position to pour concrete in the fall, and then you can't pour concrete until you hit the thaw in the spring, which could be anywhere between March 15th and April 15th, kind of depending on what the weather is doing. So everything kind of got pushed according to that.
Mr. Mason?
So what percentage would you say it is complete right now?
Of that building? That building's over 50% complete. I mean, the way that building works, it's purpose-built. It's almost like a design-build type of real estate piece. So the landlord there makes a contribution of a defined amount of dollars, and then the tenant covers all the rest of those dollars. This month, we will be done with our contribution, and in fact, our construction-related expenses will be 100% done with the entire development, but for the final landscaping around the corner and some of the final improvements on the outside of their portion of the site. They are almost fully enclosed all the way around that building, and they'll be getting very, very close to that in the course of the next 30 days. They've already got kitchen stuff getting ready to go in there. The FRB, the fire-resistant paneling that's in that building, is already going into the kitchen. So it's much farther than you can see now. There's a lot of activity inside, more than you see outside.
So your confidence is pretty good that they will meet the June
I have no
timeframe?
concerns whatsoever about June 30th. I remain hopeful for the middle of May for them to be open. I believe they'll get their certificate of occupancy, which will allow them to actually bring the inventory in and to do all the things that they need to do to kind of ramp up their business. I anticipate, they just recently opened a store in Madison. I think they learned some things about how quickly the appropriate turnover should be from the day they get their occupancy permit to the day they open to the public. I would anticipate that they take a solid week to 2 weeks to get their training done, to get their inventory going, to get the kitchen tuned the way it's supposed to do. But I would anticipate their certificate of occupancy to be early May.
Are they planning any screening on the windows?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
I had a question, Jack. What do we consider complete? Because what I'm hearing described are what I would consider to be leasehold activities. Were those in the agreement as part of the completion, or was it just the construction completion?
Everything needs to be completed, so all the landscaping, everything that went in front of the commission for approval, landscaping, lighting, site, parking lot, stormwater, building elevations, everything has to be completed at that point.
Well, I understand that, but the interior facilities that are being discussed here,
Well, we don't
you don't care about that.
we don't regulate that as long as it meets building code. So
So what we're really hearing is completion of the construction is much nearer than the June date. You're kind of saying time the leasee gets in here and gets all their stuff in
Right. I
here.
mean, we currently have we have a 725 square foot suite in the south building. I'm actually preparing a lease right now for that. We have the 3,000 square foot or so end cap, which you can see right at the end of the driveway here. And then we have a 925 square foot office. So we have two suites that are vacant now, unleased. Those won't, unless we sign a lease today, for example, the leasehold interest there will not have been established, and so that work would necessarily follow the June 30th date. You know, it's our belief that we can't control for the completion of that. The restaurant just seems to be a little bit different from how I would have interpreted it in a line similar to yours, which is if I'm not spending any more money, I must be done. But the landscaping, for sure, has always been held out until June 30th because we knew that we wouldn't be able to get everything in the fall.
Yeah, weather issues there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Adams?
Well, judging from my end of town, where we had another new restaurant open recently, Crave at the Chalet Motel, it's very successful. I know that this community is just waiting for new opportunities to taste new things and be part of the culture of the restaurant, and I know they're really going to love it when it opens, and I'm glad you gave us an update. And I'm just
Absolutely.
curious, I was very impressed by Collectivo's outside space, which I wish we could use more, but we will in the spring.
Well,
It reminded me of
fireplace is on.
Colorado. Yeah, it's on now. They have a fireplace and outside waterfall. Now, right now, that kind of seems like it belongs to Collectivo, but it's part, Cafe Hollander is going to share that kind of open space, am I correct?
Actually, it's going to be very dynamic. Cafe Hollander has its space between the building and the Collectivo space. So there will actually be two distinct spaces, each servicing their clientele. We've made sure that the designs work with each other appropriately. Hollander is planning on having its own fountain, and will have its own outdoor environment to complement what's happening at Colectivo. We expect it to be very active. I'm hopeful that the people at home can now learn that they are able to park over here at times behind City Hall as it does get crowded in the spring. So there's going to be opportunity, I think, for a lot of folks to come here and enjoy the town center. I'm thinking Memorial Day is going to be quite a weekend at Mequon Town Center.
Great.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the development agreement amendment. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any
Thank you all.
opposed? Thank you, Blair. Moving on to item number 7, Dan Mikolajak. Mikolajak. 8677 West Freistadt Road. Minor request, accessory structure of greater than 1,000 square feet. And we need to remove this from the table. I need a motion to do so.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to remove from the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item is now before us. Jack.
As you may recall, we had a couple discussions regarding this site in the past with regard to the use of the building. Originally, it was intended to be all agricultural. The applicant had stated at the time that there was going to be some personal use to it, so it was approved, but our city attorney then basically stated that we could not approve it in that general format. So what happened since then, we've worked with the applicant. He's now provided a 2-hour rated wall between what's considered the personal portion of the building and the agricultural portion of the building. So you'll end up with a 2,268 square foot structure that can be used for personal use, and a 1,880 square foot section that can be used for agricultural use only. The residential portion, the 2,600 square foot or 2,200 square foot section, did go to Architectural Review Board and was approved at their last meeting. So basically, we're in front of you just to approve the 1,880 square foot addition to the building. I would have had it on consent, but since we had to remove it from table, I couldn't do that. So I think we're satisfied where we ended up with this one.
Good.
Is it off the table?
Commissioners, it's off the table. Anybody have a motion?
I move to approve as described by staff.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Commissioner Schaefer.
I was just going to say thanks for working. This has been quite a journey, so well done on both sides.
Right, we got it done. Motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Carry on.
Enjoy your building.
I got one comment I just want to clarify. There's definitions of the partition wall. I just want to make sure we're going to do it the right way. There's a fire partition wall. I've looked into it, and some walls have to protrude through the ceiling, and the aesthetics of that, just a wall going higher than actually the roof line. So I'm suggesting we put a fire partition wall, which goes up to the roof line, because if it was a full agricultural building, there would be no wall. The wall is basically just a barrier between two items. Either a barrier wall or a partition wall was all I was hoping we would agree with, instead of going a fire wall, which actually goes up through the roof line. Because the aesthetics of that, you have a pitched roof, and then you're going to have a squared off roof that's going to protrude through it. That's going to have to go 2 feet above it to actually make a fire wall. It's just that's what a definition of the fire wall would be. But a fire partition would go actually to the roof line from the inside. You wouldn't see anything on the outside.
It would have to meet the building code definition of a firewall. It could not be a fire partition or a fire barrier. It would have to be a firewall. And not all firewalls have to go through the roof, so we can clarify that with the inspection department. But in order to treat it as a completely separate building, it would have to be a firewall.
Okay. So you can work
Figure
with
out,
Jack.
yeah.
Work
Yeah.
with Jack on that.
Yep, will do. Perfect. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Moving on to number 8, Tom Zajac for Lakeside Development, Oriole Lane, immediately south of 11104 Oriole Lane. The applicant is seeking rezoning recommendation and concept plan approval to allow 9 lots for a single-family residential subdivision on a 10-acre property located immediately south of 11104 Oriole Lane.
Yes, the next two items are somewhat interrelated, and there's a little bit of complexity to them, so I'll kind of go over them, speaking in terms of probably both, but this majority of the modifications and changes will occur on this site related to this proposal. What I have up in front of you is the zoning of this area, and as you can see, the bluish area is the IPS PUD that is Sarah Chudnow is governed by. The portion along Oriole Lane, this area here, is zoned residential R3. Back in at the time when Sarah Chudnow was approved, or roughly in that time frame, there was a land division that created 4 separate lots along Oriole Lane. The CSM is in your packet for informational purposes. What the applicant would like to do is to do a PUD on this development. In order to do a PUD and have legal standing, you need 10 acres of land. So what the applicant has worked with the Sarah Chudnow, the owners of the JCC, to create what basically is a 10-acre parcel, which is shown in the black, and then the remaining area up in here would be given to the JCC. So there was a bit of a land swap. The JCC would end up with roughly 2.5 acres less than they have now, and this development would have 2.5 acres more, which gives them the 10 acres to apply for the PUD. So that's kind of how we got to this point with regard to the legality of it all. On the 10 acres, the applicant is looking at doing 9 single-family condominium units. We've had a lot of discussions over the months, probably longer than the last 2 applicants with regard to this site. The site has a number of wetlands that kind of go in and out of the site. I can bring up the wetland plan for you. As you can see on here, there's a number of wetlands that allow for very little developable area. There's pockets in here that could be developed, and in this area here, there's pockets, and then in this area here, there's pockets. So what we were trying to accomplish, instead of having 4 single-family homes or more based on the zoning and having larger single-family lots that would drain directly into the wetlands, we were trying to protect the wetlands but come up with a plan that maybe condenses the development in the center of the site. So what you have in front of you is the proposal. Let me just get to it. That shows basically these are the 9 single-family condominiums. Again, it keeps all the development in the center of the site. The northern portion would be deeded over to the JCC, and it keeps the property line to the south further away from some of the existing residential units that are there as well. I guess staff's critique of the plan, there's a couple issues. I think one of the areas we don't really prefer is these 2 units kind of off this road to the south. It's pretty close to the road. You'll have a little bit of a cul-de-sac. We kind of scaled it out. We feel that you could probably get all 9 units up in this area here off this main road and still meet the 30-foot spacing requirement. And if you couldn't meet the 30-foot spacing requirement, we'd probably be supportive of reducing that to 25 or something, just to eliminate this area here, because there's one area that's hatched. There'd be a wetland fill in this area, and there's some wetland fill on the back sides of these units. The plan would require a wetland fill up in this area. It's shown hatched on the plan. It's under the 10,000 square foot requirement, so there will be a general permit through the DNR, so that would be required. A lot of these buildings are not compliant with our wetland setback requirements, which would mean that they would have to just discharge water into a storm facility prior to discharge it to the wetland. So you couldn't cheat drain any of the patios, or any of the gutters couldn't directly flow into the wetland. They would have to flow into a stormwater facility and then be treated and then discharged into the wetland. We've been working with DNR on some of these issues, the wetland fill, the wetland setback variations, and we're not all there yet as well, so that's one of the reasons we're actually recommending that we table this to another meeting. The other issue that we're dealing with is the regard to specimen trees. We know there's specimen trees out there. Based on the size of the site, we couldn't pin down by the time of the meeting exactly where they were in relation to the development, so we don't really know at this point how many will be impacted. We can get our forester out there to tag them, and then we'll have the applicant GPS them so they can locate them on the plan, so we know what we're talking about in terms of total impact. We felt it was important to have it in front of you, though, because this is a bit of a change from what's out there now, and it's a little bit more creative thinking to try to get this development done. So we wanted to get feedback from the commission before, and I'm sure the applicant does as well, before spending additional dollars and going to the DNR for fill requirements. So with that, we do recommend tabling the item. The applicant did provide us, and I'll have Robin hand them out, there's some drawings of what the typical home site would look like for this development. We didn't have it on the disc because we didn't have them electronically, but we thought we'd pass them out so you can kind of see what the target type of product they're looking for at this site. So with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, we have a couple of people from the audience that wish to address us on this issue. Janet Ain?
My name is Janet Ean, and I'm a resident of Hidden Reserve, which is the development that's immediately south of the Oriole Lane and Sunnydale intersection. So we're immediately south of this proposed development. In addition to me being a resident of that development for over 10 years, I'm also the president of the association, and that's 54 homeowners in that development. And I've received many concerns, many opposition to this development for a number of reasons. First and foremost, this is a wetland area. It's the last remaining buffer zone, if I can call it that, the non-technical term, that many of the residents feel we have between what has been pretty dramatic commercial development along Mequon Road and along the Port Washington Road corridor, as well as a lot of residential development that has occurred in the last several years immediately surrounding the development. There's a concern that obviously by disrupting this wetlands and this natural area here, we're disrupting the birds and the wildlife, small mammal wildlife that is in the area, and we're removing any type of buffer between a very nice residential area and immediately to the commercial development that's along Mequon Road and also Port Washington Road. A second item that has come up just recently as more information has come to us about the development is that it is a smaller condominium development. Now, I've not seen what those condominiums are going to look like, but I'll tell you, being president of our 54 homeowners association, I would be hard-pressed to question the viability of 9 units when it's a short drive down Mequon Road, and you can see a couple of smaller condominium developments that have had trouble being completed, and some are even having for rent signs out there. So I guess there's also some concern on the part of residents of exactly how viable would this particular development be. So I wanted to make sure that the commission knew that there's a lot of concern. Many of our residents were not able to be here because they are away for the winter, either part of it or a good portion of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ain. Charles Boomser?
My name is Charles Baumser. I'm a resident of Hidden Reserve. I appreciate the opportunity to address the commission. I think Ms. Zane addressed and expressed many of our concerns. We recently moved to the area. One of the things that attracted us is the semi-rural nature of Mequon. Driving down Oriole Lane into our subdivision, we appreciate the opportunity to enjoy the woodlands. Walking along there, we can enjoy the woodlands. The issues of protection of the wetlands, the issues of the animal life were clearly described for you. The other questions and concerns I have is whether the infrastructure of Oriole Lane, the water mains, the sewage have all been looked at and addressed so that we don't have to worry about those as concerns, putting the extra stress on those infrastructure components. I would prefer not to see this development exist because I think that it's important to preserve the ecology of that area. It's a fragile area. Thank you.
Thank you. John Graham?
Good evening. I'm a Mequon resident. I am not a neighboring property owner, but I've lived here for the last 45 years or so. And in observing the development business from a personal perspective, because that's my business, I'm in favor of developments like this. It's sensible development. They're being sensitive to the environmental areas around it, and I would encourage this type of development throughout the city. Resisting development oftentimes ends up producing products in the future that are not sensible. So these folks have spent a lot of time, a lot of energy. It's a wonderful site. They've maintained the areas that are sensitive. The birds and the wildlife are not going to go away because of 9 houses that are being built in that area. As far as the condominium is concerned, they're single-family homes, as I understand it, that will be operated under an association, not too dissimilar from a homeowners association, except for most of the areas will be cared for by the association. So that's my understanding. I'm in favor of this kind of development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. And Lisa Lamb. Lisa Lamb. Oh, she's here.
I'm a little confused as to why someone who doesn't live in the area was speaking on behalf of the development. Anyway, my name is Lisa Lamb.
Can you pull the mic down just a little bit, please?
I live at 10925 North Oriole Lane, which is directly across from this proposed development. I sent an email to Alderman Hawkins shortly before I came over here, so I figure I might as well just read it. Maybe that's the easiest way to approach this. Dear Alderman Hawkins, we'd like to express our concerns about the proposed proposal by Lakeside Development to build 9 houses on Oriole Lane just south of Mequon Road. We purchased a home at 10925 North Oriole Lane in February of 2014, which is directly across from the proposed site. With snow covering the ground, we did not realize the property contained wetlands, nor that it had the serious water flow issues that it does. It wasn't until several months after we moved in that we realized what we had gotten ourselves into. In short, we have areas of our yard that are either fully saturated or underwater much of the year, making them unusable. And I sent some photos, which I can forward to any of you if you'd like to see. We have serious water problems where we are. The point being, the acreage that Lakeside wants to develop has been identified by the DNR as wetland or having wetland indicators. Most of it is essentially a swamp with standing water throughout much of the year. We are very concerned as to how the disruption of the natural flow of water will impact the surrounding properties like ours. We have some other concerns too. We're very confused as to what Mequon's policy is regarding wetland fill and tree preservation, because it sounds like a lot of trees will be sacrificed for this. We personally tried to obtain a fill permit due to the water issue that we have, and we were denied because we were told that we had wetlands on our property. So it just seems to me like, okay, you know, is Lakeside going to be given permits, whereas we were not? I'd like to know why. And because we were denied a fill permit, we tried to alleviate the standing water by having a pond water feature put in. And that after a solid rain, even that overflows. You know, the moisture, the soil is made up of clay and it just doesn't absorb anything. So we're having problems even with that. So in short, we are very concerned about the ponds or proposed stormwater basins that Lakeside is discussing as part of this. And what we're concerned is that we're going to have flooding as a result. Just like with this pond that we had put in, the water just sits there. It doesn't really absorb back into the ground. So that's something we want to have a lot more information about. Also, as far as the DNR goes, we spoke with the DNR because we asked them about getting a fill permit for the issues that we have, and they basically said, no. Based on where we are, we would be denied at this point. We could hire a professional to come in and do wetland delineation, but they cautioned us that we could end up with even more wetland being identified on the property. So I'd like to know to what extent the DNR has been involved so far. We were wondering about that. Aside from all that, we're concerned where the proposed road to these units would be. Because based on a drawing that we got a year ago, it looked like the road was going to be coming directly out where our house is, which means we'd have headlights coming right into our front windows. Also, we'd like to know what the gentleman previously mentioned this as well, the impact on the sewer water system, because we were told by a neighbor shortly after we moved in that that was a big issue apparently when our house was built, that the sewer system would be compromised by the additional load. So we'd want to know more about that. Also, and this is one that particularly concerns me, there are a lot of people who walk their dogs and ride bikes on Oriole Lane. It's very narrow. There's steep ditches on either side that are filled with water a lot of the time. And when cars come, you have to move off to the gravel shoulder or else it's just dangerous. There are no lights, there are no sidewalks, and we are worried about what the additional traffic is going to be. As it is now, that's a straight shot down Oriole Lane in between Sunnydale and Mequon Road, and nobody goes 25 miles an hour. I've called the police about this. So another thing would be whether or not a stop sign would be put in. We're concerned naturally about the disruption that construction brings and how long that would take. There's a school bus stop directly across from where this is being proposed. And anytime that school bus is there and there's another car trying to pass, it's very dangerous because the road's so narrow. And lastly, I am very concerned about the wildlife in that area. We have a lot of deer, fox, ducks, that sort of thing. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. That's all we have.
There's another hand up there.
Sir?
I guess I didn't sign up to speak. May I?
Sure, use the microphone, please. Give us your name. For the record.
My name is Al Washko. I'm the president of the Winding Hollow Homeowners Association. We will be affected by the drainage, and that's what our immediate concern is. Will any drainage exacerbate our area? This, as I understand it, this wetlands area drains directly into the Winding Hollow drainage area, so we naturally would be quite concerned about that. I don't know which engineers will be hired. I know Yankee and Yankee has done the engineering work at Winding Hollow. They did the engineering work at Children's. I think they've done elevation studies in other parts of the immediate area. If they're not hired by Lakeside, we'll hire them to help us be sure that the drainage won't affect us adversely. We've had discussions with Mr. Keegan about this, who's been very helpful to us with other drainage issues, by the way, as well as Jack Zader. So they're familiar with at least our beginning concerns, and we'll be watching this closely to be sure that there are no adverse effects. I've been a hospital administrator in several parts of the country. I was a CEO of one of the Harvard teaching hospitals. I've learned a lot about drainage plans over the years because some of my hospitals were adversely affected by poorly carried out plans or poorly developed plans. So we will do everything we can to be sure that any design is well thought out and well executed, and we'll be looking to hire some expertise to help us be sure of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Washoe. Mr. Zajac.
I'm sorry.
Would you like to enter the discussion? And
Sure. I'm Tom Zabchak. This is my partner, Scott Humber, my business partner. I would just like to say that with respect to Hidden Reserve, I respect everybody's concern that are residents there. As a matter of fact, I was involved in the development, not with Fred Miller. Fred Miller developed the project, but I recall when that was went for approval that all the neighbors surrounding the Hidden Reserve were all against it. And now I find it ironic that the residents of Hidden Reserve now are against additional development. And, you know, as commissioners, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Whenever a developer comes in, there's always opposition for new development. This property is currently zoned for residential development. And Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, we can go in and develop 4 single-family homes with driveways that go on to Oriole Lane. Is that correct?
Yes,
Without rezoning.
Without rezoning, it is zoned R3. There is a 4-lot CSM that was approved, so each of those lots would have development opportunities, potentially with individual access points off Oriole Lane. You know, we always try to consolidate, but it may or may not be the case if they come at different times and things like that. So there is the ability to develop at least 4 homes on the site right now.
And which would not require any extraordinary engineering. And yeah, I have to compliment our staff, Jack and Jim and company, and Kim. They all do a great job. So I don't think anybody has to worry about stormwater issues should this property be developed. But our point is that we feel, as opposed to developing 4 homes on the property, it just would not really add anything to the neighborhood. And somebody also mentioned the fact that there's property that's not being sold because of an abundance of lots available. That's not the case at all. As a matter of fact, there's a huge demand. As a matter of fact, more than likely, we probably would have most of these things sold before we even put a shovel in the ground. There's a huge demand. And Mayor, I think you've even received a number of letters or emails from people that are supporting this. And unfortunately, they couldn't make it, but or to speak at this meeting. But we don't have a concern with respect to absorption of these properties. But more importantly, I think developing a project that would be more in keeping with what Lakeside does, as opposed to just making 4 single-family lots with driveways going out to Oriole Lane, just really doesn't make sense. I shouldn't say it doesn't make sense. It's not the best use of the property. So that's where we are on this. And I guess I also mentioned that as far as flooding or wetland issues, we've spent a fair amount of, actually a lot of money. We probably have in excess of $40,000 into this project already. We have the entire site. The wetlands have all been delineated. We worked with an engineering consultant firm. We're confident that we could develop this land. We still have some questions. Our biggest concern is I don't want to move forward. Jack had suggested that we table this, but I don't want to move forward and spend another $40,000 and come back to the Planning Commission, and then you're going to say, no, we don't buy it. I would suggest if we can do some sort of a straw poll here to determine if you're in favor of this. If you're not, then that's fine. Then we can move ahead. So that's my position, or our position.
If I can just add, the impetus of this development is that we have been building and designing homes in Mequon for over 30 years, and a lot of our clients are leaving because there really is there's no alternatives for somebody who wants to get rid of their larger houses. The kids are gone, and we've lost a number of clients already. And the whole idea behind this is that there are 9 houses on 9 acres, but they are clustered together. They're very close to the road. They have very little impact on the environment. The yards are going to be intentionally very small, plus, of course, the wetlands wouldn't allow for large lots. But these are homeowners that are looking for high-end product, but they don't no longer need 3,000-4,000 square feet. These are likely to be in the 2,800, maybe 3,000 at the high end. But if you look at the plan, and I realize it's just a preliminary plan, these are going to have very, very minimal impact, much less so than 4 individual houses on 2-acre lots. That's what we're finding isn't selling. That's not what our clientele is looking for. This is what they're not only looking for, but demanding. I mean, some of them very vocally. So we're going to sell, we're going to put out a product that obviously we feel comfortable is going to sell well and have minimal impact on the environment.
Just let me comment on, Mr. Zajac mentioned, a lot of people in the community that have large homes and are looking to downsize those homes and are looking for something exactly like this. And as you said, I've heard from numerous people like that would like to see something with smaller homes in a condominium setting close to all the other businesses in Mequon. So this site is very attractive to them. And so from a marketing or a housing market standpoint, I think this is very desirable. Could you explain what happens with the drainage on a conservation subdivision versus what happens to the drainage on CSMs?
Sure. If it's a four-lot land division like it is, and individual homeowners come forward to build their homes, they're not going to be required to provide any stormwater maintenance for their individual sites. Now, since there's wetlands here, there may be a situation where they may not be able to meet the wetland setback, so they may have to treat some of that runoff before it enters the wetlands via like a rain guard or something like that. But if they're building pads within the setback, then they're not obligated to do anything regarding stormwater. Through this conservation subdivision time, they're going to development. They're going to have to provide a full stormwater management plan that'll meet all the requirements, and James can get into the details of what those are in terms of quality and quantity, in terms of runoff and stormwater techniques and management. So if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, a couple things. I guess to start, in regards to the wetlands, to respond to a couple of questions that were raised. The wetlands were delineated by what's called an assured delineator, which is a DNR-approved person. So they go out there, they identify the plant life, the species of plant life, and that's how they determine where the bounds of the wetland are. And since they're assured by the DNR, those delineations are then approved. They classified them as moderately susceptible, and our code doesn't directly set a setback for moderately susceptible wetlands. So we default to the DNR's code, which sets a 50-foot protective area. And what that means is you can't have direct run-on from impervious surface into those wetlands within 50 feet. So there's ways around that by having green infrastructure, like Jack was mentioning, bioswales, rain gardens. You can also direct the runoff to a filtering facility like a green infrastructure facility. The fill for the wetlands are regulated by the DNR, so we don't regulate wetland fill. That's all regulated through the DNR. For the stormwater questions that were raised, a stormwater management plan would be required for this site. It would have to be approved by both the city and MMSD. It would require that runoff does not exceed the current rate of runoff for the site. It also requires that the TSS removal exceed 40% for the site. So it would be a well-vetted site. Right now, this is as much as we've seen for the site plan, so we don't have a whole lot to comment on as far as the strategy for the site, but we would review that if it goes forward.
Okay. And a decision on the buffers for the wetland and the protection of the wetlands that do exist has yet to be done because we don't have that information from the DNR at this point,
Right.
Which is why you suggested we table this matter, correct?
Well, they've provided us with some guidance. We corresponded with them over the past week. They allow for impervious surface within that 50-foot setback, but they have certain caveats. Impervious surfaces can be located directly adjacent to the wetlands as long as the runoff is diverted to an appropriate treatment practice prior to discharge. So ultimately what it means to us is the site plan would have to be reviewed by the DNR for conformance with their regulations. We would review it at staff level, but we wouldn't want to proceed with it unless the DNR reviewed the plan and approved it. So they do allow impervious within that setback, but it has to be treated appropriately.
would the wetlands be better protected under this plan versus just the 4-lot subdivision on Oriole Lane?
Well, even a home site would have the same kind of requirement if it wasn't part of this type of development. The wetlands that's a DNR regulation for any type of development.
Okay. But that would be individually controlled?
Right.
Okay. Commissioners?
Hey, I've got a question. The proposed 9 homes, how would they compare in square feet to some of the homes that are already on Oriole Lane? 'Cause I was down there today, and there's a nice mixture of homes, some larger homes, some modest homes. Square footage-wise, how compatible or what you're planning to put up would they be with those existing structures?
They'd be in the neighborhood of 2,400 to maybe 3,000 square feet, but they would be very upscale. When I say upscale, $200 to $400 a square foot.
So it'd be very compatible, I would think. It seemed to me those homes are in that range already. Hidden Reserve is a different breed of cat. It's further away than was implied here, in my opinion. There are a number of private residences between this area and Sunnydale and Hidden Reserve. So to the extent that these structures would be quite compatible and normal to what's there now, I don't see a significant shift in terms of the value of the neighborhood, except this is going to be new construction and a much more interesting layout than you have in a conventional line of homes.
The density of Hidden Reserve, I believe, is much more dense than what we're proposing. And quite honestly, I think what we're proposing would be an enhancement to the neighborhood.
Yes. I would agree with one caveat, and that's that we make sure we have solved the water issue. It seems this whole area is sort of a water-sensitive area from what we've heard from other residents from time to time. And so I would hope that anything we're engineering here have a good safety factor in it, because a lot of these delineations are somewhat subjective, and even the reports that were in the packet suggested they weren't quite sure where all this would end up, because they didn't have really well-defined plant growth they could go by. And as we change the impervious surfaces there, we were going to change the way the runoff works, and there's going to be water where we didn't think there would be water, and so on. So I would hope there's a good safety factor in whatever we approve here. And so I would be in favor of tabling to make sure we've done that well, so that we don't discover a year or two from now we've just aggravated the problem. But I would like to see this go in, given we can do that.
Just to clarify, we are adding an additional retention pond. There's already one retention pond on the property, but if this was for individual single-family homes, there would be no requirement for an additional retention pond. So in theory, it should be have less of an impact as it relates to drainage on the adjacent area.
Alderman Adams.
This neighborhood has a lot of history, and I'm talking neighborhood being Oriole Lane before the other neighborhood came to the south. When I was first an alderman, there was like a discovery when people started. They used to all have, many of the homes on Oriole Lane had pretty large acreages, if I remember right, 2-3 acres, some of them, and then people decided to start to subdivision their lots into 1 acre. And that took some getting used to by the neighbors. I remember there was a lot of discussion when that came up to council for those lot divisions, but they had the right to do so. And then when Sarah Chudnow came in, we worked very hard with the neighbors on Oriole Lane, and I think it ended up being a really good situation, and I haven't heard complaints since. But you have to, I mean, I know this isn't part of the request, it's the next thing, but in reality, 2 acres that were part of the acreage that gave Sarah Chudnow their density is going to disappear now. And I think that the neighborhood, I really need to hear from the neighborhood about this. And I know we have neighbors to the south, but I'd like to hear from the neighbors that live along Oriole Lane besides just one. Because we've always worked with them, because they've always been on the edge of a lot of things happening to the east. So I guess I'd want to hear a little more from the neighborhood. You're asking what we need to know. I'd want to get some of the answers about the wetland that have been brought up. Trees, specimen trees, can't go anywhere without knowing that, because once we give a lot, we have to make it buildable. And the amount of specimen trees can affect how many homes can go on a site easily. It did in Wildwood, it affected it tremendously. And the yield plan, well, first of all, we're saying it's an enhancement of the neighborhood, it's a marketing point, these type of houses I'm hearing. But that's why I want to hear from the neighborhood. Would you rather have 4 single-family homes, which are kind of what's there now, more consistent, or do you want this enhancement? Do you consider it an enhancement to your lifestyle? And I don't have that answer right now. They may agree. They may think that, hey, this is going to bring our values up. I know the homes I used to know on Oriole Lane, and maybe there's been a lot of homes that have expanded, but they were smaller ranches, a lot of them. I mean, these are bigger homes than I would think many of the homes that I remember on Oriole Lane, but staff can research that for us, because that was a good question. So, you know, I need to hear a little bit more before I can judge this, if it's a good thing or not. But those are some of my concerns. But once again, I really do listen to people that have to live around something like this. And my last question would be, Jack, you gave us a R3 yield diagram?
Yes.
So is that how you came up with the number of 9?
Yes, we spent a lot of time on trying to make sure, and what we tried to do, if you look at the yield plan, we tried to even keep those building pads outside the wetland buffers as best we could, and we achieved that for the most part on them based on a 40 by 60 pad, and some pads even larger. So there is the ability to do it. Now, I don't know market-wise whether that would ever be a
Well,
plan.
see, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I've always heard that yield plans have to make sense, and this one doesn't make all that much sense to me. I can't imagine people driving through the whole, you know, the community property to the east to get to their house, 7 and 8 and 9 and things like that. So I would wonder if 9 is really the appropriate number if we're trying to shoehorn in just a little bit too much.
Well, we originally had 12, I think, in the agenda stated 12 at one point, but we did remove 3. And I think the way we look at it is feasibility, whether it's a feasible site development, and maybe not be completely realistic, but in terms of feasibility, it can work in accordance with the code, and that's how we came up with the number 9.
Okay.
We talked about even reducing the number a little bit if we could, and I think the applicant's concern is that economies of scale, again, by putting in that road and infrastructure, there needs to be a certain amount of lots to make it worth
Well,
the while
that's
to
when I
do.
need to know specimen trees and things too,
Sure.
because that will impact the amount, and that hasn't even come in the formula. I do know that these are excellent builders, but these are bigger homes too. I mean, to me, a 2,400 square foot to a 3,000 square foot house is a fairly large house when you're talking about placing them so close together. So those are things I think about, but I certainly couldn't give you any type of educated answer tonight.
Commissioner Stoker.
I guess my feeling on this is, I personally like the concept of the cohesion. I'm familiar with their product. You've got other products similar to this in Mequon. The appeal to me, I don't live in this area, but the appeal to me would be, I know what I'm getting, as opposed to 4 individual homes that could come along. Potentially, you could have one modern contemporary home. You could have a lot of different type of homes, and all they are subject to is the Architectural Control Board of the city. So to me, to come in and have this cohesive community almost is appealing. Clearly, I think, Jack, you said 40 by 60 pads is what these 9 are designed.
That's what we typically look at for an overall.
I guess my concern, if I have a concern, is are you going to be able to build this product that you want to on a 40 by 60 pad? I'm assuming at some point you're going to need to provide us with a pad with either free of specimen trees or minimal specimen tree removal. I'm thinking, are you thinking 2-car garages versus 3-car garages on a product like this, and can you really do it on a 40 by 60 pad? Wildwood comes to mind where we had these pads laid out and everyone wanted to exceed the pads, and it became a specimen tree nightmare for us. I think 7 meetings in a row, we were up there looking at more specimen trees having to be removed. So I have complete confidence that you're going to do your due diligence and that the engineering is going to work and we're not going to affect the DNR. The DNR is not going to allow you to proceed unless it's done properly. So those things don't concern me. I know that the city's going to look at the sewer and water impacts. It won't proceed, I think, to ease the fears of the public. It can't proceed unless those things have been examined and do make sense. So I think you're looking for some feedback. I would be in favor of this. You know, I understand from your perspective the need for 9 versus 8 versus 7. It does become a point that there's a point of diminishing return for you. You can't afford to do it if there's not enough, if it doesn't make sense. So 12 versus 9, I'm hard pressed to see how you even had the 12 crammed in here.
Well, they get creative sometimes, developers.
Yeah. So I don't object to the 9 by any stretch, and I think it's a great little project for that area.
Yeah. Well, with regard to the 40 by 60, if we can focus on the area of development and the DNR would approve the wetland fill and they're okay with the reduction in the setbacks, you basically end up with an area of development, and it's going to be up to them to fit what they can fit in there. And it may be something we want to limit the size of the structure, like we did with the Preserve at Glen Oaks, I think, had a maximum square footage. So they may not have to be confined to that 40 by 60, but they're going to be confined to this area to put all those units in. So it may result in 7 or 8 just by the type of product that they're putting in there. So I don't think we'll have that same battle like we did with Wildwood. And being a condominium, these are going to be individual units, not lots. So the owner of it is going to own the unit, which will be pretty much the foundation of the house, and not have that ability to spread it beyond that area.
Yeah, if I can just comment, I think you made the comment that this is similar to some other things that we have done, and it really is nothing that we've done before, and we're not aware in Mequon where it has been done, where these are really sort of, for lack of a better term, cottage-style houses that are clustered very closely together. And we're modeling this off of a development we did up in Ephraim, Wisconsin, in Door County, and those were really close. I mean, I think our limit was 25 feet apart, and they're clustered together. It's a walking community, and they've done extraordinarily well. And the concept is people that don't want attached walls with their neighbor, but they also don't want a single residence on a single acre lot. They want to have a sense of community. Many of these people may spend winters elsewhere, but there's, as I said, we're losing these residents because there's nothing in Mequon that offers this. And I know one of the emails that came to the mayor was one of our long-term clients who eventually moved downtown because he was, as he said, I was tired of waiting and I had nowhere to go. So again, to our knowledge, there's really nothing like this in Mequon now. But
let me clarify that. I apologize. Architecturally, the look is very similar to your product just south of Hidden River. I can't think of the name of the.
That's the Preserve.
Yeah, Hidden Reserve. So I feel architecturally you have some of that look and feel in there. So,
but again, even more cottagey, very we expect these homes to be very much tied to the environment as versus these, large facades, and even with multiple roof lines. And again, we expect probably most will have 2-car garages, although we'd like to have the ability for 3 if it works within the architecture. But the whole idea is to cluster and have as few hard surfaces and even cut surfaces. We want to minimize the amount of lawn in favor of a lot of nature.
Are these houses you've built?
Yeah, some of them we've
I
built,
recognize.
and some were just elevations of proposed houses.
Yeah.
Again, we would like to walk out of here with, again, some idea, and Commissioner, you brought up a good point about the economics. If we get, let's just say, 7 building sites on a development where we have to pay for the roads, pay for all the infrastructure. I think some of the other things, Jack, you mentioned, you want an entrance with a sign and so forth, and street lighting and street trees. To get 3 more lots as opposed to just building 4 does not make any economic sense. And this is going to be a project that Lakeside is going to build and design all the homes. So obviously there's some economics there. I mean, if we don't make a whole lot of money on the development of the property, we can make money on the building of the homes. But, I mean, if there's a lot of money. I'll give you an example. We did the Preserve at Glen Oaks, and that's a 17-lot subdivision. 3 of the homes were built on Glen Oaks Drive. It was very simple. It's very simple to what we can do on this property on Oriole Lane. Just connect the water and sewer to the street and build the homes, as opposed to where we developed the other 14 lots where we had to put the road in, all the utilities, and sewer and water. The cost, I mean, we're $1.5 million. Well, it wouldn't make any sense for us to do this entire internal development for 7 lots when we can do 4 right off of Oriole Lane. So that's why, you know, Scott and I came here for some feedback to say, are you in favor of this or not? And if you're not in favor, that's fine. We'll do the 4 homes, and that's fine too. We prefer doing what we're proposing, but I don't want to come back here, like I said, after spending another $40,000 and end up with, you know, 3 more lots than if we didn't spend all that time and money. Does that make sense?
Mhm. That's a fair question, and I know you heard from John, and you've heard a little bit from me, and I would say I support your concept. Got to hear more about the wetland buffer and the wetland protection. But the concept itself, I think, is good, and I think if you can work that out, then I think this would be a beneficial project. Commissioner Mason?
I'm definitely in favor of the concept. I think it looks great, and I believe it's a much better design than just 4 homes off of Oriole Lane. But the concern would be water. When we talk, other projects in this area, a number of neighbors have come up and talked about the water and the drainage. So we don't want to impact any existing homes, and you certainly don't want to have impact with homes that you're going to build, that if they have water issues or have water in the basement, that's not going to be very favorable. And this seems to be a recurring issue in this area. So James, what do we have issues right now that you're dealing with in this area with water? I mean, one neighbor already talked about water in the front yard and can't get rid of it and built a retention pond, and that doesn't solve the problem. And water, I mean, dealing with water can be extremely expensive.
Absolutely, and like you said, it has been a recurring theme we've heard about when working on this project. The last I checked was when Children's Hospital went through, and we had no active drainage complaints in that area at that time. There had been some previously. Nothing was active at that time, or people were actively complaining, and we had something we had to resolve at the time. So. We hear from the neighbors, so we take that feedback when we get their site plan and the grading plan and everything like that. When we review that plan, then we take that feedback and try to make sure that it's addressed appropriately, understanding that you can't resolve all of the world's problems with this site. So right now, I mean, this is as detailed of plans as we've seen. I mean, it shows a pond in the north portion of the site. There's an existing pond that serves Sarah Chudnow Community Campus. We're aware of those 2 things. So we would review the plan thoroughly going forward.
I guess I would add too that there's a CSM further to the south of here across the street that was 4 lots with wetlands on each of those properties. And I've spoke with a couple of neighbors that bought into those and don't prefer having the wetland there, but it is there. And it's kind of almost the situation you're going to create if you do the same thing here with the 4 lots. You're going to get people that buy into that may not know the extent of them until spring, or there's a more heavier wet season, and then want to do something with it. So I think that's some of the genesis of the issue is when you're buying lots in a CSM that doesn't have a stormwater management plan associated with it.
So to the applicant, you're talking about doing fill, is that in order to get the base of the house up high enough to get it out of the water, or why are you having to do fill?
Because we're going to have to fill some of the wetlands, and the DNR will allow us to fill 10,000 square feet of wetlands.
Commissioner Mason, I have on the screen, this is the area that we're referring to in terms of fill. There's a little hatched area here. So the applicant is trying to fill in this portion of the wetlands to create, other than that, it would have to go basically around and through a small channel to get through here. So that's the portion that they're proposing the fill on. It's not fill to raise the elevations, to fill the actual wetland itself.
And does this area allow for these homes to have basements, or is it too wet to put in a basement?
We're anticipating putting basements in, and the homes will be raised to a certain degree.
Yeah, just so we all understand, I think by now you do, we haven't done engineering, we haven't done soil testing, we haven't done any stormwater management to speak of. We're in the very early stages. Now, granted, we've been into this for a year. We don't own the property. It's still owned by the JCC and the other.
Sarah Chudnow.
Sarah Chudnow. So we quite frankly, we haven't even finalized a negotiated price. All we're looking for is, does it appear as if we meet all this criteria? Are we heading in a direction that the city would like to see this property developed as?
I'm coming to you, but Jack, can you help me? So the staff recommendation is to table. So if we vote in favor of tabling, then we can also give sort of our straw poll answer as requested by the applicant. Yes?
Sure, I think, he's not looking for a yes or no vote, because I think there's still some unknowns, like the specimen tree issue and things like that, yes, so. But I think it's, if everything turned out to be favorable to the applicant in terms of the specimen trees and DNR and Phil, would you be supportive of the project as shown? I guess, I think that's where he's looking.
Okay. So you just mentioned the only portion that you don't own is the 2 acres that's Sarah Chud? You don't own any of it?
We don't own any of it.
Okay, don't buy it, I don't think, because I feel like we're trying to squeeze blood from a stone. I can't believe that, I honestly can't believe we're even thinking of building here with all of the water issues that keep coming up in this area. I mean, I'm surprised, frankly. And I don't doubt that, engineering and the DNR would do everything in their power to make it right, but this is a recurring issue in this area that we continue to hear about. And the fact that you're trying to start with 12, which is an interesting concept, but even the 9 and the amount of wetlands and the fact that we don't know, I think the concept is great, and I agree with you that there's a need for this in Mequon. I think the site is wrong. This does not seem, it's a big city. There's got to be another place that you can possibly put something like this.
So I take that as a no.
Yeah. My only other thing I was going to mention is, you said you found ironic that the Hidden Reserve folks came forward and were objecting to it when people had objected to Hidden Reserve. I don't know if it's ironic. I think that's pretty natural and normal. I think the mayor would say the same, that many of the developments in Mequon, whenever you have a development, people are going to oppose it, and then people move in there, and then someone's going to build next to them, and then they oppose whatever's going in next to them. I think that's just the nature of the beast.
Ironic was probably a wrong word. Maybe I should say consistent.
It is consistent, I would say that, and I would say expected as well. Wait, I have one more thing. So you said that your clients are looking for something like this, not for the 4 standalone homes. And then you said if you weren't doing this, then you'd maybe do the 4 standalone homes. Can you just, I feel like it's not a threat,
definitely,
right?
we will develop this property, whether it's what we're proposing or 4 homes. And,
but you said your clients are
but it
looking
won't,
for that.
our clientele will not be moving into the 4-home, it's just not what they're looking for.
And just to clarify, if we determine in our due diligence that we have water issues, we have no intentions of developing this. We're obviously in business to sell product,
Right.
not to get stuck with
Right.
product. We haven't gotten that far.
Yep, I think so I agree with staff's recommendation to table. I think it's a great idea. This is just, in my mind, not the right spot at all. Thank you.
I just have one question. Jack, you mentioned, see, to me, this is a neighborhood, Oriole Lane. It's a neighborhood, okay? But now you're mentioning that if they do this, they're going to have a little sign for their little subdivision that's in a subdivision?
I don't recall having conversations with the developer
I thought you
regarding
mentioned
sign.
that. I thought you mentioned that you need room for like the entryway, which to me means like a sign and stuff.
Well, I didn't have that conversation, but I assume they would want some sort of entryway
Well,
feature as they turn it. I mean, I assume it's going to be a private road, so I would assume they want
It's
to
going
let
to be
people.
a private road?
That would be the plan at this point, to keep the profile of the road down and make it smaller than having a public road
Well,
with a
I think
larger.
the city can, I know in my neighborhood, which is a public road, it's only 17 feet wide because of the easements historically, because it's such an old neighborhood. And I don't see why the city can't compromise and make a little narrower road, which is good for traffic calming, and keep it open to the public. Because to me, this is not very neighborly. We can walk your road, but you can't come and walk in our neighborhood. I mean, this is in the middle of a walking area where,
Well, we can put an easement over it to allow pedestrian access. The issue of making it a private road is then the city doesn't have to maintain or plow it in the wintertime, so
well,
it's a benefit.
we didn't
but-
put an easement when we, I don't know how Wildwood got two private spurs, and I don't think there's a pedestrian easement on those, so then we should make that, you know,
Yeah, it
for
wasn't
any
done at that
private
time,
road.
but if there's
Yeah.
a desire to do so, we can definitely do
Well,
it.
I would have that desire, just to make them part of the
Sure.
neighborhood.
Just to clarify again, up in Ephraim, our entry marker was a stone pillar that was 30 inches by 30 inches by 4 feet tall. So
Okay,
very.
well, that's,
ver-
thank
very
you, that's a nice
underestimated.
clarification, because I'm picturing lit-up sign, landscaping, and that just seems weird in another neighborhood. Okay.
I think I've commented that I like the development. This piece of ground, if you go by and look at it, there's a lot of scrub vegetation in there, which is going to stay there essentially unless you put a few houses across the front of it. Not very conducive to enjoying nature, really. If it's cleaned out a little bit, opened up a little bit, as it would be with the areas that you're talking about as part of the development, part of the conservation development, to me, this would be more attractive than what you've got now by far. Plus, it gives you some homes that there's a market for to retain people in Mequon, which you're saying we're beginning to lose. I have the same reservation about the drainage issues and the water, make sure that that's engineered properly. My feeling would be, I would be for the project if we can do it properly and meet the needs for the drainage and utilities that have to go in there.
Others?
Would you like to make a comment, Mr. Bessler? No?
Leroy, anything to say?
No. Well, there you have it. You do have some support. And keep in mind that any rezoning of the property would be done by the Common Council, ultimately. So,
Should we table?
yeah.
Motion to table.
Do we have a motion?
I move to table the issue as recommended by staff.
Second?
Motion and second to table with those helpful suggestions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Matter's been tabled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But I also then recommend tabling item 9 as well.
I move to table item number 9.
Second.
And item 9, for the record, is they're seeking rezoning recommendation approval to reduce the overall land area of the planned unit development by 2 acres for the property located at 10995 Market Street, that is Sarah Chudnow. We have a motion and a second to table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That matter is tabled. Move on to item 10, Kohler Credit Union. The applicant is seeking a rezoning recommendation and land use plan amendment approval to change from B3 office to B2 community commercial for the property located at 11351 and 11363 Northport Washington Road.
Thank you, Mayor. I have the parcel highlighted up on the screen in terms of the location for the rezoning request. I think most of you were here at the time. This is the spot where the Kohler Credit Union was approved and has been built. The request is to rezone that property from B3, which is our office zoning, to B2, which is our community commercial. The applicant is requesting that as having some difficulty finding tenants that will be willing to stick around and get approvals for a possible text amendment or a conditional use grant, so they're looking for a little bit more flexibility and uses for the site. When we look at rezoning analysis, we typically look at a number of factors. The first one is, what does the surrounding area look like? And in terms of this one, as you can see from the map, the property directly to the south is B3. The properties to the north are all B3. And this was done with a purpose back when the zoning was changed. The B3 was used for good or for bad as somewhat of a buffer between the Port Washington commercial corridor and the residential single-family homes to the west. We feel that in this case, if a rezoning would occur, we would more than likely have to look at potentially rezoning those other properties, or we would see other properties in the area coming forward with a request to have the same B2 zoning. And as many of you know, what this would open up was for the possibility of a fast food restaurant. I think many were aware of the issue with Taco Bell when it was rezoned a little further north. I have that up in here. That was up in this area right here. Now, that was a little bit of a different circumstance because it was abutting a B3 property and plex development and not single family. So we feel this is even more of a cause for concern that some of these properties that directly abut a single-family development would have the ability to do more intensive retail uses as well as fast food restaurants. So in terms of, are there under reasonable uses under existing zoning? Again, it's an office zoning. There are a number of uses that are allowed. The B2 does allow for more retail uses and more intense uses, but I think that's contrary to what we set the zoning up to begin with by allowing these B3 uses. So we understand that it may take a little bit longer time to rent some of these places out. And it was B3, at the time the Kohler Credit Union was built, so I think they were aware of the zoning at the time, and it may have been more beneficial to hear the request for a change at that time instead of at this point. I don't think staff is supportive and can recommend the change to the B2. I think that we feel that this area shall remain a B3 area that is serve as a buffer. Other options, if the credit union is looking for flexibility or potential other options, would be to maybe change some of the uses of the B3, add a few uses. I know they had some potential tenants like a fitness center or a dry cleaner that wanted to go in the building, and staff can look at those uses to see if it's more beneficial to have them in the B3 and still meet the office purpose and intent. The other option we did speak a little bit about was the LTD overlay district, which does allow some limited type retail in that end of the development. There's a property, the Lexington Square property, which is, I'm not sure if I have it captured on this map. Nope, it's a little bit further north of Astor Woods. That property is B3 with an LTD overlay, so it does allow some limited commercial, but does not allow the fast food and other little more intensive retail uses. So at this point, staff recommends denial of the rezoning to B2 and would prefer it stay at the B3 of the current office zoning. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. You have two people that want to speak, and I have a suspicion they're sitting right here. So, gentlemen.
I'm Brian Starr, and I've been working this site since day one when we assembled it for the credit union. And yes, it was zone B3 when the credit union went in. It was suitable for the credit union at that time. But at this point, we have two retail spaces abutting the credit union, and we'd simply just like more flexibility in leasing the space to a lot of users that are now fitness related. We've had medical users that are fitness related, and I guess the zoning isn't that clear as to whether or not fitness and medical go together. And it's hard for us to market the property to specific users such as dry cleaners and fitness people because the current zoning doesn't allow for that use. And we can't even make a suggestion that they will ever get approvals to occupy the space with that type of use. Before you do that, people need to spend money on floor plans, leases. They need to know if the site's going to be viable for their use. What are the terms of the lease going to be? So before we go through the process of spending almost $1,300 to get approvals for the text amendment, and also to leave the space on hold for 2 or 3 months while someone's trying to get this approval that they may or may not get, it just leaves us in a very bad position marketing the property today and going forward. This credit union is a very expensive building. The site was very expensive. They have no intentions of turning this into a fast food restaurant. Restaurants have approached us to lease the space within the building. That is not a use the credit union will accept because it leaves garbage and smells in the back of the building where the drive-throughs are located. And so that is not going to happen. And unfortunately, within the B2 zoning that we're requesting, it does allow for fast food, and that's too bad. I wish it wasn't there. but going forward, 10, 20 years from now, fitness is a massively growing category in these buildings, all of them. And whether it's the assisted living homes that you're approving or these smaller retail buildings, that is a use that is in almost every building today. And we need that flexibility to lease this property. So that's why we're here today. Thank you very much for your time. I realize that you're not supportive of it, but we really need that flexibility in leasing this space.
My name is Ben Lamacchia. Our firm, Lamacchia Group, did the design build for this project back 2 years ago, and Jack had referenced that we didn't originally make a zoning request to B2. And the understanding was that we wanted to get more of a professional office atmosphere, and that's really what the spirit of our request is more consideration for something that now that we've gotten into the market. And what really has happened is, if you take a look at the map, we've created a four-way intersection. And the type of user that we're attracting is much more of a destination retail service type business. And a majority of those do fall into B3, which is fantastic. But there really are two that kind of stand out, and one being the fitness health club type, and then the other one being a service-based beauty salon, even nail salon, dry cleaner fits into that category. They're not permitted uses in the B3 zoning. And we've actually had 3 separate tenants come to the table interested in the space, and after they learned that they would have to go through the rezoning process to get, and again, the uncertainty of the rezoning process, because we're going through it right now, is something that prevents them from taking further steps forward with plans, ultimate lease execution. So really what you end up having is with a permitted use, a situation where someone can get occupancy in probably 2.5 to 3 months, now gets prolonged to about 6 months. So really what we're asking is the consideration that we're allowed to work with tenants when they come in, they're permitted use, and they can really proceed with the property. That's more or less what we're asking for. The credit union has no interest in having a restaurant, having any sort of a food service or food sales, which the restaurant use is a conditional use, so the Plann Commission, the city, would have the authority to say no. They wouldn't have a drive-up because they already have drive-ups on the back of the property, so that really wouldn't be an option. Really what we're trying to do is just enable ourselves to market this property to the users that are coming to our door. And I know that Brian is the leasing agent on this. He's commented to me a number of times that a majority of the calls he gets are from uses such as the ones that I had explained.
So health and fitness, dry cleaner, massage, nail care, things of that nature.
Precisely.
Personal services.
Personal services.
Personal
So
services,
a
health,
beauty salon might be a good example as well. So again, and just to say it again, the issue is that if a beauty salon comes in and they want to lease a space, they have to go for a rezone. So as soon as they learn that information, it's about a 2-month process to just get the rezone. They're not going to start on lease drafting until they actually have a rezone approved.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to get the lease done before they start on their architectural drawings, which have to be state approved. So again, you have a very long process, and I had mentioned there were 3 tenant prospects that walked out the door, and 2 of them have not located to Mequon. So, there is definitely a net add, and I think what we had not, accurately perceived when we went for the original plan approval 2 years ago is really the impact that light was going to have in terms of the type of users that were going to be attracted to this site. So, again, it's a professional building. The credit union is interested in its own business. It is an owner-occupant. It's going to continue being an owner-occupant. They're just asking for consideration from the Plann Commission and working together to resolve this. So,
Yeah, I guess I think some of those uses might be okay to allow in that district, but
Well, some of them are already in the district. I mean, beauty care is already in the B3 as a conditional use, so it's already in the district. And then
nail salon.
it falls under.
I thought I saw that.
It's beauty aids and personal grooming services, including but not limited to facial, skin, hair, and nail services. So that's listed in the B3 already as a conditional use grant. And, I guess our early conversations with the applicant was to look at maybe potential changes to the B3 and add some of these uses, and some of them may fit as long as, again, they don't stray from the purpose and intent of the district. And I think, fitness centers, as long as they're appropriate size and scale, would probably fit within there, and maybe a dry cleaner would too. That's a little bit more difficult because of some of the the fumes and odors that come from a dry cleaner. Some of them have just dedicated pickup and drop-off sites that would probably work okay, but, you know, some of them may have a little bit more intensive a use. But we can look at those individual uses, but unfortunately, through the text amendment process, it's gonna take, you know, a 2 to 3 month process depending on when the application's filed, and there's not much we can really do to speed that up. There has to go through the public hearing process and go to common council for approval. So I understand it's a little bit longer of a time frame, but it's still at the most 3 months and potentially a little bit quicker. So, you know, conditional use grant is a minimum month, potentially 2 months, depending on when the application comes in. So it's not much different in terms of conditional use grant to the text amendment. And so we can be proactive and look at some of these uses as a policy issue, but that'll have to fall into place on our schedule of policy changes that we've been making overall with all of our zoning code updates, so.
And that might be a good thing to do. Rezoning it to B2 is going to take a couple of months and end in probably certain failure, so that's probably a waste of time. But other commissioners? Commissioner Parrish?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for sitting here the whole time till the end of the agenda. It's always nice of an applicant to do that. I understand what you're saying about leasing the office. Just to clarify, so any of the uses that they mentioned, gyms, et cetera, they're not restricted uses, they're conditional uses. So each one of those.
Fitness centers are not permitted at all.
At all,
within
they're
the
restricted
B3.
uses.
They're,
the B3.
yeah, they're prohibited.
Okay.
So they are allowed in the B2 as a conditional use. I think they're allowed in B4 as well. So that's one of those uses. B4 is a office development as well, but it's a larger scale office development. So I don't see why it would not fit in with the B3. And if they would have approached us at the time for the text amendment, we probably would have done what we could to get it through in a timely manner. So those are ones.
Some of those are conditional and some of them are restricted. Some of the uses they've mentioned.
Well, we either have permitted, conditional, or they're prohibited.
Yep.
And in this case, the fitness center would be prohibited. Now, medical office, that's all permitted. Any type of office, professional office is permitted in the B3. The B2, again, gives you that flexibility, adds retail trade, and then the fast food restaurant, and then some of these other uses, fitness centers, things like that.
And what's the Petzold site that we had just approved and they got an extension for a year?
That's B3 as well, to the north. You're talking about the Leonard Insurance. That's B3 as well, so.
Are they putting retail in there?
Well, they've put it off because they're trying to get their tenant leases taken care of as well, but they're leasing it out in terms of the B3 zoning as their guide. I think the tenant that approached Kohler for the fitness also approached them as well. So that discussion probably would have came up either way if she was committed to either one of those two sites.
Well, it's a tough call. It's a beautiful building. You're going to attract a lot of retail-y, commercial-type users just by the way it's designed. It's a very nice exterior building, and then you have Venture Court across the street. So I think long-term you'll be able to fill this. I wouldn't despair. The zoning change is a little bit of it could create a slippery slope issue, as I'm sure you can imagine. So I would be very in favor of and for whatever is a conditional use, I would personally entertain a lot of those uses you'd said. So I don't think you need to just know what's in the zoning code, and I think you shouldn't shy prospects away if it's conditional, because I think we'll sympathize with you.
So if we remain B3 and came in with a fitness club, there could be a text amendment to that?
Yes, and I guess that was our thoughts from the beginning, that was something that we could even handle it concurrently with the conditional use grant, so it wouldn't delay it even further. As long as the applicant had the proper plans and everything drawn up at the time, and based on, I think, our knowledge that it would probably get approved, we could handle that concurrently with the text amendment and conditional use grant. So it would only add an extra month at the most from just the plain conditional use grant approval process.
Could we get approval for the overlay? Because I did notice a couple of uses that might be, handy for us.
Well, we could, I guess, at this point, we have a proposal in front of us to B2, I guess. Going forward, this will go, unless you withdraw your application, then I guess we'd have to figure out procedurally how we could go forward with either going to common council, or do we have to come back with a fresh application to planning commission. I'm not really sure how that procedurally would work, but, because in front of us right now is the request to B2.
And the LTD overlay allows additional businesses in addition to the B3. and as conditional use grants. Am I
Yeah,
correct? Am I correct?
the LTD, everything is pretty much a conditional use grant, and it includes things like bakery, bagel shop, bookstore, candy store, camera store, things like that. So it's retail in nature, but lower intensity retail.
Smaller.
Yes, and there's limits on hours of operation and things like that as well. And that is an option. That's where Lexington Square has that on their property.
That would be a better option for you as opposed to the B2, politically, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, we could certainly work with you on any uses you identify that you think should be in B3.
Okay.
You know, we can try and work with that. But everything's going to take a couple of months.
Okay.
But we could be proactive. Think of things in advance. We can try and be proactive so you're ready.
So if we wanted the overlay, we'd have to reapply? We couldn't tack it on?
Yeah, I think so. I think you would have to do a new I mean, I don't know how we could change it tonight. I don't think it wasn't noticed properly, and I think we'd
Okay.
have to have another notice and agenda of the item.
Could we get tabled and then come back?
Well, you're
Under the same
tabling the
application?
B2, so you're really not getting to the LTD. You have to start with the LTD.
Okay.
Is that on the council agenda for tomorrow? It is? Okay.
First reading, right?
Yeah.
First reading.
I have a question. That overlay is giving a ton more retail uses, candy shops, bagel shops, things you said. I like the idea instead of your first idea, which was, we think those uses work, we can add exercise, instead of this huge giving all kinds of rights, because if we do this for these people, which I'm not saying I wouldn't want to, there's a lot of people up and down that road with the same zoning that you have. And then I think we have to rethink of the whole zoning if we're thinking a lot, that overlay we're talking about. I'm more comfortable doing the initial thing that will encompass what the people have come up to you. Because if we do an overlay for them, I want to look at the whole road then, to be fair. And that's not the way we planned it at all. I mean, so I'm more partial to the beginning idea, to work with you. It's going to go quickly, than introducing a big overlay, unless we go up to every other bank down the road.
Proactive approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Commissioner
Yeah.
Fox?
Yeah, I prefer staying with the B3 as well. And if we can make it work other ways, that's fine. Gives us a lot of control over what we do end up with that way, whereas if we open it up to a B2, there's a whole new discussion. Plus, it also has an impact on the other parcels in the area. I also have a fundamental problem with developers coming in under one zone, building under that zone, and then coming back and saying, gee, I want to change the rules. And we've run into this on a couple other situations as well. And either that ought to have been known in the beginning when they did their market studies for the use of the property and addressed that problem at that time. Then going back and trying to retroactively change the rules and change the potential character of what we thought we were going to get. So I much prefer staying with the B3. I would vote no against the B2 for that reason.
That's my sentiment as well. May we make a motion?
To deny.
Commissioner Mason?
I had a question. Jack, what was the one example you gave of something that's prohibited? I thought you said it was the workout facility?
In the B3 district, there is no allowance for a fitness center, I believe it's called, in the B2 zoning district. It allows for a fitness center as a conditional use. That's not in the B3. So that's one of the changes that we could look at making to allow those in the B3, because you're seeing a lot of, some of these Snap Fitness and other type, smaller scale uses going into office areas where people can leave their office and go right to work out, not have to.
And how, if you say smaller scale, how do we quantify that? By number of machines or?
Well, we could do it like with, even I think in town center, we have fitnesses as a permitted use, but they can't exceed a certain size. So I believe it's like around 3,000 square feet, if I remember, in that area. So we could make it either conditional as fitness centers and then use the conditional use grant to limit size, or we could specifically detail in the text saying that fitness centers under 3,000 square feet shall be conditional. And so then they would be prohibited over, so that would prevent a larger fitness-type development going in a B3.
Okay. And then the other one you mentioned was like the hair salon and the nail care, but doesn't that have odor issues as well? Like hair salon can be quite
Sure. Yeah,
pungent.
I agree. I think, some of that maybe is really up to the owner of the building to regulate between their tenants and put in the proper ventilation systems to deal with it. So, I don't think we're fully opposed to a dry cleaner at this point, but it's something we'd have to look at. And I think that opportunity for them is passed at this point, so I'm not sure if that's something they would pursue going forward anyway.
Okay.
Real quick, is it just the property to the north that's a B3 with an overlay, or how many other B3s in this area have an overlay?
I think there's only 2 in the entire city. I think there's the Lexington Square, and there's one on Mequon Road, about across the street from the development we just approved earlier today. Is there any other ones? I think that's the only 2 in the entire city that have that.
Okay.
That's why it's limited.
That's why it's limited.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to deny the rezoning.
Second.
Motion and a second to deny. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Well,
Thank you.
there's some good news. We'll work with you. If you have any other ideas, be sure to let us know.
Thank you.
Good evening, thanks.
Mayor, I had a question for Kim. Kim, hello. I hope you weren't sleeping back there. At the end of the packet, we have this report that gives us some idea of what's in discussion. There are a couple of items on there. I just had there's a reference to the Town Center Loan Program for Ruby Tap. What is the loan program?
In 2013, staff, along with the Economic Development Board, reached out to First Financial Bank Center. They, through their Community Reinvestment Act and standards in which to comply with that, they have in other communities, and did so in Mequon, establish basically a business loan startup and expansion program. First Financial happens to believe in Main Street redevelopment and typically invests in downtown areas or districts within the communities that they have these programs. They have one in Grafton, and it originally started in Oconomowoc, which is where their headquarters are. So we worked with them to develop this loan program. It's targeted for town center, so town center businesses are eligible for it. It's a nice complement from our perspective as an economic development tool. Town center, as you know, is part of a TIF district, which it helps provide public improvements, but also incentives to the developer for a redevelopment project. This comes in at the back end and helps businesses build out their tenant space, enhance their current business by allowing for additional capital investment, equipment investment. In this particular case, they're looking for some dollars to help with completing their build out of their outdoor dining space. All of the underwriting and all of the loan commitment comes from First Financial. There is no financial skin in the game, I guess, for the city, other than at the back end in terms of the tax base that's being created. The program, per the council's approval, did highlight some criteria for the type of business that we'd like the dollars to go for. It talks about business expansion, business startup. It talks about types of uses that are going to generate a large number of customers, employees, and a type of business that provides attraction for people gathering and creating that vitality in the town center that we were looking for. So the process is that it goes through Economic Development Board, Finance and Personnel Committee, and Common Council.
What's the incentive to take a loan there as opposed to going to the bank?
Well, First Financial has committed $250,000 as part of the program. You can get a loan anywhere from $10,000 up to $25,000 at a 1% interest rate, and they do a very quick turnaround of the underwriting of the loan. They can usually give the applicant and the city of Mequon an answer within 3 business days.
So the taxpayers are underwriting cheap interest rate for the development?
This is
Couldn't
First
get
Financial.
1% from the bank.
There's no city dollars in this.
Pardon me?
There's no city money in this.
Where's the money come from?
First Financial.
It's part of the TIF district money?
Nope,
So we've got a private lender giving us the money.
not us, Ruby Tap.
So how's the city sit in this? Are we liable in any way?
Nope.
We're just putting them together, is what you're telling
Right,
me.
and we're promoting the program because it meets the goals and objectives of Town Center. So we're making it available as one of our economic development tools, and we want to promote the program so other businesses are aware of
So
it. It's great too for, we have some developers who are interested in maintaining some of the existing structures in Town Center, but they're probably so deficient in terms of meeting building code, plumbing code, heating code. It'll allow dollars to be utilized to bring those buildings back up to code.
Okay, so, but the liability is between the loan holder and the financial organization.
Correct.
We're not a part of that.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm just looking, I thought we had another one. Yeah, we have under the commercial, we have a similar loan fund program. Is that the same thing?
No, the revolving loan fund program is community block grant dollars that's provided through HUD, so a federal government program. The dollars were provided to the city of Mequon a number of years ago. We probably, the community, a community in our particular circumstance probably would not be eligible for those dollars in today's world, but we had probably about 6 or 7 years ago about $650,000 in that loan program. It's completely based on job creation. You're eligible for up to $20,000 for every full-time equivalent position that you create. It's available citywide. The Ozaki County Economic Development Corporation helps us administer the program because they better understand all of the federal and state criteria. In this particular case, we've got a recreational facility, which is Nickel Park on Wauwatosa Road, just south of Donges Bay. We have a new potential user to operate that driving range. Their business program talks about year-round activity, lessons, a contract with First Tee, which is the PGA youth program, and they're looking for loan dollars due to the creation of the jobs at that particular site, and it will help with land acquisition as well as capital investment. Same process, it goes through the Economic Development Board, Finance and Personnel Committee, as well as the Common Council. Ozaki Economic Development Board, along with resources they have within the private lending businesses, do the underwriting and the vetting of the process for us. Historically, it had been done by SewerPAC, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, but they are no longer staffing members to do those loans. So Ozaki County is serving in that role for us. There are specific loan terms, and the finance department manages those loan terms. There is collateral that's received as part of the program or part of the loan as the city sees necessary.
Okay, so that one is taxpayer money, just comes from a different source?
Correct.
Okay, so we tax it here, give it to Washington DC, they send it back as a grant.
I'm
and
not
we're
sure of
happy
the
with it.
flow.
Okay, I just wanted to understand it, that's all.
They just print it.
Yeah, well, that's right, there's not even anything behind it. Thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Hey.
We're adjourned.